Yes, pretty much. In authentic enlightenment you don't become thoughtless, you become emotionless. The confusion between the two is a big spiritual misconception. Here's the thing though. It is not possible to become enlightened instantly. It's a long path, it's too much to take. The only thing that can happen instantly is self-realization, the recognition of the unreality of your persona. When that happens, you are oftentimes given a kind of a glimpse into the ultimate state, when you feel like there's no free will, things just happen, and you become empty inside and emotionless. This glimpse can last a few days, a few weeks or even a few months. You may not like it, get freaked out, or miss the emotions, your ego does those things, not you. But it never stays like this forever after the initial truth-revealing event. There is just too much suffering, too many tears, too much pain and fear that we routinely carry inside of us. So after this short-lasting experience, emotions invariably come back, in heightened intensity, which oftentimes can be absolutely overwhelming. There could be a flood of compassion, tears for humanity, anger, fear, lots and lots of stuff. Ego has been seen for what it is, an illusion, but it's not going away without a fight. All these emotions are to be allowed, surrendered to, if the ego is to be ultimately dissolved. If the initial insight is complete, there will be no way out of this process. You will cry all your tears, and have all your fears, experience all your anger, all your hatred, and along with that, all the love, all the compassion, and all the beauty that exist in you, as the polar opposite of the unpleasant stuff, to ultimately arrive into the fully enlightened state where emotions don't arise, and everything is just what it is. That's a long road. As someone once said, it took me no time at all to get enlightened, but then it took me 12 years to get over it. This is also what Osho meant when he said, in my vulnerability, I have become invulnerable. You open up to all your vulnerability, all your pain, all your suffering, and you accept it all to disappear, to become completely invulnerable in unity. You accept all your pain until there is no more pain. Pleasure is just another side of suffering, and love is just another side of hatred. So, yes, in complete enlightenment emotions don't arise. But it rarely happens this way. In the absolute majority of cases, the initial insight is very incomplete, oftentimes quite shallow, so the period of being emotionless is taken to be the shock of enlightenment, and the consequent heightened emotional sensitivity is taken to be the desired, true, enlightened state. People become proud of how deeply feeling they have become, they wear it as a badge of honor. The reality is, they just became slightly more in touch with, and attuned to their suffering. Sometimes, when emotions don't make sense, ego goes as far as to announce it now feels other people's suffering. How else will it convince you that it doesn't exist anymore? Wink wink, he he he. This isn't enlightenment, this isn't surrender. That's merely how it begins. In enlightenment, the surrender is absolute, and the peace is absolute, also. It is a much more vulnerable and painful process than such people lead you to believe. They just want to think they are enlightened now, that's all there is to it. The reality is, the depth of vulnerability exposed in authentic enlightenment is quite striking. When surrendered to, things that used to arise in emotional response are seen to be so petty, you can't even say they barely register, they don't register at all. You just stop seeing them. A dozen or so other responses to this question is a good illustration of this dynamic. As I mentioned elsewhere, most people speaking of enlightenment aren't enlightened, and there aren't many authentically enlightened people on Quora. Also notice that in some of those answers, people are dismissive of such descriptions, and there's also a tendency to pathologize them. This is understandable. Ego is always fearful of what it doesn't understand, and it always wants to see itself as superior. That's its nature.